Welcome to the 5-Pack, where we talk about the 5 things that matter, 5 things that will matter, and a daily pack rip. Here is your host, Kyle Elfrink.
We are nearing the point. We're closing in on the spot where we can say we've been here a week. And if you can last a week, you're a success, right? Maybe. I don't know. We welcome you into the 5-Pack, a Friday edition. This is the spot to be if you cared about what happened last night, what's going to happen tonight, and if you'd like to take a stroll down memory lane. That is what we do each and every day, 12 o'clock Eastern, right here on the 5-Pack. I am Kyle Elfrink. Great to have you alongside here at the Better Sports Network. Want to thank our producer as well, Miss Heather Klein. We are ready to rock and to roll. I always like to give you a preview of the pack that we will be ripping open a bit later, although today is not a rip as such. Like these packs, you can rip them. Today's pack, you can't rip. Today's pack, you have to unfold. Ah, yes, a wax pack. 1990 Fleer baseball. A mere 33 years ago, right? 33 years ago. These cards, I actually opened a few of these packs, more than a few of these packs. Today, we will open another pack. We'll see what we get. There is an interesting story from this set, 1990 Fleer baseball, about the most valuable card in this set. And you could sit here and guess 400 names. You could be an expert on 1990s baseball, and you still wouldn't guess who has the most valuable card in this particular set. I don't know if we're going to get it in this pack of cards, but we'll do our best coming up in the pack rip at the end of the show. We always start, though, with the things that are important to you, the fantasy player, you, the baseball fan. 5 things that from last night mattered. Now, I will admit, we've got 4 baseball items. On occasion, there is news in other walks of life, other sports of our life, that do matter. And today we'll sneak in a bit of non-baseball sports news that matter. But we do begin with what happened on the diamond. It was a rather light day with the schedule, so not a ton of action, but still things that were absolutely worth following. But maybe the most important thing that mattered all day long on Thursday didn't even happen in Major League Baseball. It might have happened in AAA baseball. It might have happened in El Paso, Texas, and it might have happened courtesy of one Fernando Tatis Jr.
Allen on 3-1. Swung on. High fly ball. Carrying in left. It's deep. Torrealba back. Gone! 3 home runs. 8 RBIs for Fernando Tatis Jr. El Nino puts on a show in El Paso. That one was higher.
That was a bomb. One of 3 that Fernando Tatis Jr. hit last night. He had 5 hits overall. Easy win for El Paso. Yes, I understand it's not the big leagues, but the reason I wanted to lead with that today and what happened last night that matters is because we are less than a week away from Fernando Tatis Jr. returning to the big leagues. He is eligible on April 20th. That is next Thursday. Padres are playing next Thursday, by the way. They're going to be on the road in Arizona. So just a friendly reminder that Fernando Tatis is nearing his return. Looks to be pretty healthy there. I mentioned last night, 3 home runs, 8 RBIs. Check out what he's been doing for El Paso. Here are the numbers. And I guess this is what happens when you have a superstar who really, I guess he's trying to get healthy, but it's been a long time. He should be healthy. The only reason he's down there is because he's suspended. Like, he showed that he was healthy in spring camp. He's had a lot of time to rehab, all that stuff. But here's what he's done at AAA. This is one of the probably top 10 hitters in all of baseball. So he goes to AAA El Paso. He is hitting .478. His on-base percentage is .586. His slugging percentage, this is not OPS. This is his slugging percentage, is 1087. His OPS is what? 1673, I think. 1670. No, nobody does that. And granted, it's AAA, and granted, it's like 8 or 9 games. He's got 4 home runs, 11 RBIs, a couple of stolen bases in 29 plate appearances. So I think he's ready. I think he's ready to get back in the fold with the Padres. And right now, they're not playing great baseball. I've talked about the Friars here on the show. They had a good run, a week-long head-to-head against Atlanta and New York. The Braves and the Mets both on the road. They took 3 of 4 from the Braves. They only took 1 of the 3 against the Mets. And then last night they were back home and they fell to Milwaukee in extra innings. So they're playing about 500 baseball, but I still like that team. I like them a lot. And getting Fernando Tatis back in less than a week will indeed make a difference for San Diego. Let's move elsewhere to the major league, shall we? We'll leave El Paso and go to a city that's got a few more lights and a few more fans. Let's head to New York City, where last night, and we previewed this on the show yesterday, we said, man, can the Minnesota Twins find a way to win at Yankee Stadium? If you missed it yesterday, since 2015, the Twins had gone 3-21 against the Bronx Bombers. Bad. House of Horrors kind of stuff. Well, last night was game number 1 for the Twins on the road at Yankee Stadium. They got the win, and they did their damage early, and they did it with a brand new leadoff hitter, a rookie, Edouard Julien.
It's deep to the left field corner and chased by Cordero. In the corner, that ball's gone. Julien to the opposite field, and it is 8-0. What a start for the Minnesota Twins.
It's a great piece of hitting by Eddie Julien from lefty. That's a pretty good approach, pretty good contact.
Eddie Julien. I like that. That makes it easy on all of us. He was leading off tonight. It was only game number 2 for Julien with the Minnesota Twins. He is a prospect, not a high-end prospect, but he is a guy that the Twins like for the future. The reason I wanted to bring him up, you saw that line score at the bottom, right? 8-0, first inning against the Yankees. That's kind of how you slay a monster. Now, we'll see if they can follow it up tonight, but that was a good start. They eventually scored 11 runs on Thursday to topple the Yankees there at Yankee Stadium. But as for Julien, what we've got here is a guy just called up, had a good spring. He can hit. Julien holds the distinction of drawing the most walks of any minor leaguer over the past 2 seasons. So he's kind of that rare breed who comes up to the big leagues and it's like, huh? A walk? A guy with on-base percentage? That's exciting. The other side of that coin is one of the criticisms of Eddie Julien is that he's almost too patient. So he loves to get to like a 3-2 count, which it's awesome when you draw ball 4. It's not so good when you swing and miss on strike 3. And he does have, I don't want to call it a K problem because, again, he's got all these walks, but he is a guy who probably strikes out a bit more than you would like. There is some pop. We saw it there on the highlight. Granted, we should also note that was Julian's second hit of that first inning. He led off the game against the Yankees with a single and then followed it up with a home run in that giant first frame against the Pinstripers. Julien, for now, has a job. But the issue we've got with Julien is Jorge Polanco. And I know for a lot of people, it's like, well, Jorge Polanco, he's not just a guy. Look it up. Jorge Polanco can play some baseball. Jorge Polanco's had some good years. Jorge Polanco is a middle-of-the-order hitter for the Minnesota Twins. Where is Polanco? He's on a rehab assignment. That rehab assignment started earlier the week. Now, he has missed a lot of time. Last season, he was dealing with a knee injury. Pretty well ruined his September. He had a brutal second half. He was hurt the entire second half. But he tried to play through it and tried to help the Twins make a run at the postseason. The run at the postseason failed, and so did the knee of Polanco. They really didn't do anything in the offseason to fix it. They said, okay, he's going to be fine with rest. He got to spring training, and the knee was still aching. The knee was still hurting. So Jorge Polanco is battling through a knee injury. I will say, even when he's back, let's say he returns next week, he will immediately take the second base job. And for Eddie Julien, he's got to find somewhere else to play, whether it's a DH, maybe he moves to a corner in the outfield. Who knows what they do with Julien. But Polanco, when he comes back, it's not like you'll sit there and say, he's back, he's ready to go. That knee is still going to be a problem. So I bring up both of the cases here, Julian's case and Polanco's. Polanco probably set to be back next week, but that won't mean you're in the clear. As for Julian, I know there's excitement, there's hype, but you start to look at things and it's like, where does he fit for the Twins? Long term, what are we looking at for 2023? And if Polanco's healthy, he's your everyday second baseman. I don't think there's any doubt about that. If Carlos Correa is healthy, he's your everyday shortstop. Now, there might be spots you could try Julian out over at third base if you wanted. You could try him out in left field, maybe right field. But honestly, he's very unproven and very green if you shoved him into the outfield. So that is kind of the statement here of what matters is, sure, last night was exciting. Last night was fun. I'm sure the bidding will be fairly high this upcoming weekend for Eddie Julian. And a lot of people out there will make their bids on Julian. But I don't know if we've got a guy who's playing every day. Now, if Polanco still has knee problems, Julian has a job. But if Polanco's healthy and Julian doesn't have a job, either as a second baseman or as a leadoff hitter, of course, for the Minnesota Twins. Let's move to our third item that mattered from last night. We just talked about Julian getting the call up. Well, yesterday, the Atlanta Braves said, hey, let's have a call up of our own. And guess who's back in our lives? Vaughn Grissom has been called up by the Atlanta Braves. Now, you might recall just yesterday, right here on the 5-pack, I was sitting here and talking about injured shortstops, and I pointed out, I think it was 4 guys. And I said, hey, take a look at your league and see if any of these 4 guys are available. One of those guys that I mentioned on Thursday was Orlando Arcia of the Atlanta Braves. Well, on Wednesday night, we did not have this news yesterday. We didn't know the extent of the injury. But on Wednesday night, Arcia was hit by a pitch from Hunter Green, which is a very fast pitch to be hit by. He stayed in the game. So I kind of sat here and said, okay, Arcia is going to be fine. Well, we learned yesterday he ain't fine. We learned yesterday, and I'll show you the highlight here, that the pitch on his wrist has caused an injury for the Braves starting shortstop.
98, 99 coming at you. He's going to stay in there.
Yeah, a great sign. I mean, after the initial reaction, thought he may be in trouble, but Orlando is going to tough it out and walk down to first base.
Well, he toughed it out for that moment on Wednesday night, but they found out with an MRI scan on Thursday that there was a micro fracture in the wrist. So Arcia is on the IL, and he'd gotten off to a very good start for the Braves. That video courtesy of Bally Sports down in Atlanta. Arcia on the IL, and so the natural call is Vaughn Grissom. Now, you go back to spring camp. You go back 6 weeks ago. Vaughn Grissom was one of the up-and-comers that people were drafting. They felt good about Vaughn Grissom. We saw him last year at second base when he was filling in for the injured Ozzie Albies. And this year, he was going to take over at shortstop. The assumption was Dansby Swanson moves on. He joins the Cubs. We'll just slide Vaughn Grissom over to shortstop. That was the assumption really all winter long. And certainly we in the fantasy community kind of assumed, okay, he's going to be the guy for the Braves. Then we get to camp and it's not the case. We get to camp and Vaughn Grissom is like sitting out multiple days. And we get to the end of camp and lo and behold, he's sent to AAA. So that was a surprise. I know a lot of people, though, held on to Vaughn Grissom. They drafted him back in March and they said, okay, he'll be up soon. Here's the moment. He is now up. Now, to his credit, he went to AAA, and here are the numbers. 10 games, 366 average, had a home run, had 4 RBIs, had 8 runs scored and a couple of stolen bases. Did great. All you could ask for, a guy who is disappointingly starting the season at AAA. He goes to Gwinnett and does just fine. So kudos to Vaughn Grissom there. And then here's the other factor here. Here's what matters with this call-up. Why should you care? It's because he can run with this job. Unlike the guy we were just talking about, Edouard Julien, right now, Vaughn Grissom, if he goes out and plays well, if he fields the baseball, if he puts the ball in play, he's the dude. And I get it. Orlando Arcia, good start, veteran player. They wanted him as their shortstop. But right now with this wrist injury, we're looking at least a month, could be 2 months, depending on how long it takes the bone to heal. And by that point, Grissom will have had every opportunity to take over this job. Grissom, maybe there's a way. I don't think there's a likely way, but maybe there's a way he could find his way near the top of the order. For the time being, he's nowhere near the top. He's buried at the bottom. In fact, he may be the number 9 hitter for Atlanta tonight. But Grissom is going to get a crack at this job. And there was excitement for him throughout the preseason. Obviously, a lot of that lost its, helium, if you will, when he was sent to AAA. But now that he's back, this is a position where he can be in there every day. And he can just say, hey, we had the hiccup early, but now you've come up to the big leagues. We need you. You came through. So something to follow with Grissom. If he hits, he can certainly hold on to this job for the Atlanta Braves. Moving on to our fourth matter that mattered on Thursday night. We take you to Toronto, where the Detroit Tigers somehow found a way to win their third game of the season, and that meant, in a 3-1 victory, that they had to turn to a closer in the 9th inning, and he might be a guy that could help you get some saves in 2023.
It's Alex Lang's game to save and preserve.
Toronto's last hope lies with Kevin Biggio.
Did he go? Yes, sir! And the losing streak is over. Lang with his second career save. The Tigers salvage one here in Toronto. They win it 3-1.
Did you see that stare down to the dugout? Now, I should note, I believe, sometimes you get reverse angles and all this. He was staring at his own dugout. I think he was telling the guys, I'm the man. Turn the ball to me in the 9th inning. That's what happens. Now, before I get carried away with Alex Lang, the 3 guys he faced were the 7, 8, and 9 hitters for Toronto. He got Whit Merrifield to ground out. Santiago Espinal, who's got like 2 hits all year, he grounded out. And then you saw the strikeout there of Kevin Biggio. I bring up Lang because right now there's no fabulous start. It's not like last night was a continuation of something we've seen in the past 2 weeks of the opening of the baseball season. It wasn't. The problem is it's not on Lang that we haven't seen those moments. It's on the Tigers. As I noted, it's their 3rd win of the season. So he gets the save. I don't think he is locked and loaded right now as the 9th inning guy with Detroit, but he's always been my bet to be the 9th inning guy with Detroit. And I drafted him in a lot of leagues, got him for a pittance. If you are one of those who is struggling with reliever injuries, or maybe your guy's not in the role that you thought, check out Alex Lang. He's a closer for Detroit. He hasn't got any real history of closing. That means he's going to be sitting on the waiver wire or at least under-owned. And if you are somebody that searches for saves, you're constantly looking for those saves. That's just how you build your team. And you say, I'll find my closer. Here's a guy you take a crack at. And if you look at his numbers right now, I think he's thrown 6 innings all year. And I know this for a fact because I follow Alex Lang. He's on my teams. He has 1 blown save. That was in Houston. That should not have been a blown save. There was a fly ball to left field off the bat of Yordan Alvarez. Should have been the 3rd out of the game. Should have been a save for Alex Lang. I can't even remember who was playing left field, but in effect, he misplayed the fly ball, kind of lost it in the glare of the lights, and it landed for a hit. That tied the game up. It goes down as a blown save. Nothing to do with Alex Lang. It was all on his defender. So that would have been the first save. Last night would have been the second save. I want to reiterate, it's not lock, stock, and barrel that he's the 9th inning guy, but he's the best option there. And I'd be surprised if A.J. Hinch, who's got a lot of other problems going on with Detroit, and we'll talk about those coming up later in the show, I'd be surprised if A.J. Hinch just didn't say, okay, let's roll with this guy. We're going to have bad games, but we can also have good games. He's our best bet in the 9th inning. And to the fact that Detroit is a lousy baseball team, never let that dissuade you from picking up a closer. Never. Look at last season. Some of the highest save totals in baseball were put up by David Bednar of Pittsburgh. They were put up by Scott Barlow of Kansas City. and they were put up by Daniel Bard of Colorado. Those three teams, Pittsburgh, Colorado, and Kansas City, were three of the worst teams in all of baseball. But you know what? They still had a closer who got them a lot of saves. Not saying Lang is that guy, but don't make the argument, oh, I don't want a closer from a bad baseball team. Doesn't work that way. Even the bad baseball teams can win 60 games. And as I always remind people, when Detroit wins their 60 or 65 games, 3/4 of them are by a run or two because they're not very good. So you get that extra jolt, if you will, for the closer to get those saves. Finally, we go to our fifth item, things that did truly matter from last night. This one is of the non-baseball variety. And when the news warrants, NFL draft stuff or any other news, we'll throw it in here on the 5-pack. Now, I know this bit of news is much, much larger to our friends over in D.C. Like, this is news that they have been awaiting for decades, I think. But it now appears official. Daniel Snyder, the much hated and much vilified owner of the Washington Commanders, there you see it, is now the former owner of the Washington Commanders. Isn't this one of the great things about the internet? I don't even know who I'm giving credit to. It's somebody on Twitter. But they've made a play on the fall of Saddam Hussein in Iraq. And they've portrayed it as the yanking of the Daniel Snyder statue outside of FedEx Field. Like I said, this is not close to home for me, but it's close to home for anybody who is rooted on this great franchise. Now, quick thoughts from me on this. I don't think anybody would dispute that Daniel Snyder has not had a productive run as owner of the Washington football team. He bought it, I think, in 1999. Here are a few things about the Snyder regime. Failed, okay? Failure, right? In America, when you have failures, like you screw up and it's terrible, should you be able to turn an $800 million investment into a $6 billion windfall if you're a failure? Isn't something wrong? This is America, people. Daniel Snyder shouldn't be doing that, but he is. That's why owners, who cares? I don't care. I guess people care. They don't do anything special. Whether they're bad or good, value just keeps going up. Just up, 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 up. Whether you're bad or good. So, hey, what is the emphasis for Daniel Snyder to do well? Do you think he would have gotten more than $6 billion if the Commanders had won one Super Bowl? No. Not at all. Now, if they'd won 5, okay, maybe he gets $8 billion. But even if 6, they're not pulling in more than $6 billion. So again, it didn't matter if the Commanders were good or not. They were getting money, okay? So that's one thing. They had 2 winning seasons, by the way, since 2008. I think in the 24 years or whatever that Snyder owned them, they had 5. One of them was the first year. They won like 10 games that first year. I don't think he deserves credit for that. But I started looking at these 24 years under Daniel Snyder. And you know what hit me? These are their year by year best QBs. These are guys who were the QBs, if you will, for Washington. Listen to these names. This is all since 99, the year that Daniel Snyder took over. Brad Johnson, Tony Banks, Patrick Ramsey, Mark Brunell, Jason Campbell, Donovan McNabb for 1 year. Do you remember Donovan McNabb played for Washington? Rex Grossman, RG3, Kirk Cousins, Alex Smith, Case Keenum, Taylor Heineke, and it looks like this year it'll be Sam Howell and Jacoby Brissett. Now, far be it from me to say those guys are no good, but those guys are no good. That is a quarter of a century of looking for an answer at quarterback. And I doubt it's coming in the draft this year. I think Washington has the 16th pick of the first round. But that's why you're not winning. You never found your QB. You thought you had it with RG3, and then he had an injury, disappeared. I guess they did well with Cousins, but they never wanted to pay him. They didn't want to ink him to a big contract. They just kept franchising him. So the best thing they've done is probably Kirk Cousins, and they didn't want to pay him. So that kind of speaks to ownership, you know. Why have you been so bad for so long? Well, you have no quarterbacks. Oh, that quarterback you had, you should have paid him. You didn't. Oh, you still suck. So if there's like one giant criticism, there's a big one of Snyder. You had a guy who could have been your winning quarterback. You had a guy who could have kept you in the playoffs. You chose not to pay him. And I know for a Washington fan, that is like one of 1,000 paper cuts delivered by Daniel Snyder. But that's a big one to me. Everybody, you got to have a quarterback in the NFL to win. You do. They haven't for 25 years. There you go. Those are the 5 things that mattered from yesterday here on the 5-pack. When we return, we've got 5 things that will matter for this Friday. Before any of that, let's turn it over to Ricky Props, who is taking a look at the NBA play-in action for tonight.
It's Rick Kamla, a.k.a. Ricky Props for Better Sports Network. Let's go to the Wood play-in tournament style with DeMar DeRozan at Miami tonight. Over 21.5 points, -125, 28 PPG against Miami during the season, 23 against Toronto on Wednesday. Bam Adebayo versus Chicago, over 18.5 points, -125. He averaged 21 against Chicago during the season. Bam is back at the 5, so he should return to 20-10 form. SGA at Minnesota, under 33.5 points, -125. He's been under this number in 7 of the last 9. Anthony Edwards is an awesome defender at the 2. Josh Giddey at Minnesota, under 36.5 combo points, rebounds, and assists, -115. He will regress to the mean after a career game. 4 games against Minnesota in the season, 14, 9, and 5. That's a 28 PRA. Go to bettersports.com and on demand with the Better Sports Network app, and hit us up at Better Network on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter.
Welcome back to the 5-pack. Next up, the 5 things that will matter. Here's Kyle Elfrink.
I wasn't started yet. I didn't even think you were listening. I wasn't ready.
Good to have you back with us here on the 5-pack. Kyle Elfrink with you on a Friday. It's now time to give you the 5 things that will matter for this Friday night. And lo and behold, guess where we start? The biggest story in baseball. The Tampa Bay Rays. They did win their 13th last night. Tonight, they are in Toronto gunning for number 14. If they win number 14, it's like 100 years since we've had a team start 14-0. Right now, the 13-0 start, this is the first time since 87. It's only the second time since 82. So it's rare air right now for the Rays. They will be taking on Toronto. And I got to say, I get it. It's mid-April. Okay, we got like 145 games left. I get it. But me, Kyle Elfrink, I'm pumped for this. This is exciting. 3-game series in Toronto. To me, 2 of the most exciting teams in baseball. How can you not say the Rays aren't exciting? And the Blue Jays, I mean, my gosh, that's a fun lineup to watch. Now, right now, all of the attention is on Tampa. They're 13-0, but Toronto's 8-5. Notable here is that tonight will be the first game that Tampa plays against a winning team. Also, tonight will be their first game where they're on the road and they're in front of more than like 15,000 fans. They've only played 3 road games this year, and all 3 of them were against the Nationals in Washington. I looked up the attendance. The Nats in those 3 games failed to hit 16,000 fans in any of the 3. It's going to be a little bit different tonight. And Tampa's played in front of fans, but it's just different. You're on the road, and instead of a quarter of the stands full, you're going to have like at least half. You're probably going to be near 30,000 for this series with Toronto. The Tampa offense is legit. Right now, here's where we stand. They have scored at least 7 runs in 8 of their last 9 games. That includes yesterday. Now, Toronto, I like the offense, but they've gotten off to a bit of a slow start. They're having struggles driving in runners. Overall, the run scored is not pitiful for Toronto, but it is probably lower than you would expect. But to their credit, Toronto is second in batting average, second in on-base percentage, and they're 4th in slugging. That's all the AL rankings. The only team that is better than them in batting average and OBP is the team they're playing tonight, the Tampa Bay Rays. I mentioned the excitement for this series. Look at the schedule. You've got 3 games this weekend in Toronto. Over Memorial Day, which is 5-6 weeks away, there will be a 4-game set in Tampa. So that'll be the next time these teams meet after the weekend. And then Toronto and Tampa will not meet until the final 2 weekends of the regular season. Like the last 10 days of the year, I think they play 6 times in the last 10 days. And this is the other side, I guess, of this balancing of the schedule. For those who didn't catch it in the preseason, baseball has done their best to add a lot more of interleague play for each and every team while scaling back the interdivisional play, which, you know, hey, I'm in St. Louis and I'm tired of watching the Reds and I'm tired of watching the Pirates. So the less I have to watch of the Pirates and the Reds, the better. And that goes for a lot of teams. They don't want to watch Detroit 20 times a year. But there is this side of the coin too, where the attraction, the excitement of the Rays and the Blue Jays, it's there this weekend. But overall, it's kind of few and far between for the remainder of the year. Like I said, we've got the 3 games this weekend, 4 games over Memorial Day. That'll be fun down in Tampa. And then nothing in June, nothing in July, nothing in August, and pretty well for September until the last 10 days of the year when they play 3 in Toronto and 3 in Tampa. So enjoy it. Enjoy it as you get set for this weekend. Speaking of game times, tonight, Drew Rasmussen against Jose Barrios, 7:07. Tomorrow, the Rays have it listed as TBD for tomorrow afternoon, Toronto. It's probably going to be Josh Fleming. He will be up against Yusei Kikuchi. That game starts at 3:07 on Saturday. And then it's an earlier start on Sunday, 1:37 for the Blue Jays hosting the Rays. And that'll be Shane McClanahan going up against Alek Manoah. 13-0 Tampa taking on 8-5 Toronto. That is something that will matter later tonight. Now, staying with that game and moving to point number 2, I ran through the pitching matchups. For tonight, Jose Barrios is on the hill. Now, Jose Barrios has gone from being one of the upper-end pitchers in baseball to being a total bum on the hump. He's been bad. First 2 starts this year, not good. 12 earned runs, 15 hits in 9 2/3 innings. 1 game against Kansas City, the other against the LA Angels. Now, again, it's mid-April. I don't want to overemphasize this game. It's 1 of 162, as they always say. But he needs to step up. He was inked to a deal in November of 21 by these Blue Jays. You know, they traded for him with Minnesota, and they said, we want to commit to you. And Jose Barrios said, okay, show me the commitment. And they did. Contract was 7 years and $131 million. Since that point, Jose Barrios has been awful. The only good thing you can say about Barrios is that he's made every start. He goes out there and takes his beating. And then he recovers and he goes out again 5 days later and takes his beating. 34 starts since he signed that contract. He is 12-9, which, you know, I guess you could say, well, he's over 500. Congrats. But he doesn't deserve to be. That record should be 9-12. The only reason he is 12-9 is thanks to his offense. But he is 12-9, 34 starts, 5.55 on the ERA, and 1.44 on the WHIP. He's just been bad. And they gave him that contract, 7 years, 131, to be at the very least the SP2, if not the ace of this team. Toronto has pitching, but if they can get Jose Barrios right, they can absolutely hang with Tampa. They can absolutely hang with the Yankees. They are my pick, still my pick, to win the American League East. Tonight's a big one for Barrios. It's big for the Blue Jays. It's big for fantasy owners. If he struggles tonight, he is going to be dropped by a lot of people. In fact, some have already dropped him. They said, well, I'm not going to even use him for that game against Tampa, so I'll just move on. I still own him in a league. I am not starting him. And honestly, the way I'm going to handle it is if he gets mashed by Tampa, that's not going to be the last straw for me. He's expected to get mashed by Tampa. They're mashing everybody. I won't cut him because of what happens tonight. I may get excited because of what happens tonight. But he's a guy in need of a big effort this evening against the Tampa Bay Rays. Let's move to number 3 on the items that will matter on this Friday. We do it each and every day here on the 5-Pack. Just talking about a guy in Jose Barrios who has struggled. It's kind of tough to bench a struggling pitcher. You know, pitching is so hard to find that, you know, if he's healthy, you send him out there. That's what the Blue Jays have done with Barrios. It is much easier to bench a struggling hitter. Let me take you to the case of one Javi Baez with the Detroit Tigers.
Percentage always up near the top of the league. This one to center. And Baez doesn't know how many outs there are. Another mistake by Javier Baez. Didn't get out of the box much on the double. Didn't really tag up last night from third, make any kind of effort on a fly ball. And I didn't know how many outs there were. Clearly thought there were 2. Takes off as soon as it's hit. And A.J. Hinch can't be happy. This is A.J. Hinch saying to Javier Baez, come down the steps. Baez takes his hat off. I mean, he knows what this is about, obviously. Moments later, Baez comes up the steps. The seats are gone. The shirt's untucked. And I think he's out of the game.
He is out of the game. That's actually the second time in his career that Baez has been pulled mid-game because he forgot how many outs there were in the inning. It happened a couple of years ago with the Chicago Cubs. SN Network out of Toronto with that video there. Kudos to them. Here's the thing with Baez. Tonight, he's expected to be back in the lineup. That's the expectation. Detroit's back at home. A.J. Hinch made that claim after the game. And A.J. Hinch didn't want to have to throw Javi Baez under the bus, but like I was talking about earlier, Detroit's 3-9. They've had some other issues. Baez, right before that play, had kind of failed to run out a ball that was hit deep to left field. He kind of thought it was a home run. It ended up hitting the wall. He got a double out of it. So there was already that baked in to the decision that A.J. Hinch had made. He is going to be in the lineup tonight. What matters and why the reason we point this out is how will he respond? It has not been a good run for Javi Baez since getting his big deal with Detroit. Right now, he is hitting 122. Right now, he has no home runs and 1 RBI. This is coming in 45 plate appearances. Last season, he had an awful chase rate. This year, he's the worst in baseball for chasing pitches out of the zone. Last season, 26 errors. He led baseball with those errors. Last season was his worst year as a full-time regular in Major League Baseball. This all came in year number 1 of a 6-year deal. He's getting $140 million over those 6 years. So the Tigers and Baez are married. And here we are in year 2. Year 1 wasn't good. Year 2 is not off to a good start. The team sucks. Baez isn't hitting. Baez is losing track of outs in the 3rd inning. Baez is having to be yanked from the game. You're stuck with this guy for another 5.5 years. 4.5, I guess it is. You're stuck with him. So they got to get this figured out. And they got to find a way to keep Baez focused. He's never been an easy player to love. There sometimes is a little too much attitude, even when things have gone well. A little too much attitude with Baez. He is very prone to cold stretches because he's just a gripper and a ripper for the most part at the plate. Right now, he's doing a lot of gripping, but he ain't doing any ripping. He's only doing whiffing, I think, right now. So he gets yanked last night. We think it's just a 1-game spell. Let's see how he responds. He's set to be in the lineup. He was dropped to 6th in the order for that game against the Blue Jays on Thursday. We'll see where he lands for this game on Friday. Moving on to our 4th moment that will matter. I take you to Oakland. Yes, they still have a baseball team in Oakland for the time being. They're trying to get to Vegas or trying to go to Salt Lake City, or maybe they'll stay in Oakland if they are built a $1 billion stadium. But right now, they're staying in Oakland. Tonight, they are home against the New York Mets. Why do I want you to pay attention to Oakland? I want you to pay attention to Oakland because they've got a guy by the name of Brent Rooker. Brent Rooker Here's a quick snapshot of what Brent Rooker did yesterday in Baltimore.
This is the third straight game that Rooker's not only been in the lineup, but he's hit the cleanup spot. Drives this one to center. Mullins back, and that baby's gone. Rooker unloads with a 3-run homer, and the A's lead 4-3.
Not afraid to pick on the big part of the ballpark either. That is twice now. You're feeling good. You're feeling good. Credit to Mark Kotsay for keeping a hot hand in the lineup.
Rooker hits a high drive to left field. Hayes near the wall looking up. That baby is gone. Rooker's done it again. Stay hot. Orioles may be asking, who is this guy? He's got 2 homers and 5 RBIs, and we're in the 5th inning. That was just a high, towering drive.
I believe they call this mount castling around these parts.
But now they call it Rookering around these parts, I guess. Brent Rooker with a big Thursday. Now, who in the heck is Brent Rooker, and should you care? I will say this for Brent Rooker. He comes with a bit of pedigree. I was looking this up, and I did not know this until this morning. There are 2 guys in the history of SEC baseball who have had a season where they won the Triple Crown, where they led the SEC, best conference in all the land, Southeastern Conference. 2 guys have led that conference in home runs, ribbies, and batting average in the same season. Rafael Palmeiro is one of them, and Brent Rooker is the other one. He's out of Mississippi State. He did it in 2017. He was drafted by Minnesota. He climbed the ladder, got to the Twins, did okay, but they had a crowded outfield. They traded him to San Diego. San Diego traded him to Kansas City. Kansas City released him. Now, when you've traveled that career arc, where do you usually land up? You're right. You land in Oakland. So I will say this. Brent Rooker has landed in a spot that fits his profile. Oakland is a spot where if you hit, you can play. You know, they're pretty well an open tryout every single week. Here's the problem with Rooker. Great series in Baltimore. What was it? For that series, 3 games, 6 hits, 4 runs, 3 homers, 9 ribbies, only 2 strikeouts, and 14 plate appearances. And you heard NBCSN Bay Area, the broadcasters there were talking about the fact that he's hit 3rd, he's hit 4th, he's in the middle of the lineup. Now, I suspect Rooker will be right back in there tonight taking on the Mets. But this situation is perhaps a little like Edouard Julien, who we were talking about earlier in the show. Right now, your outfield in Oakland is Tony Kemp, who's your leadoff hitter, Ramon Laureano, who is pretty well just being offered as a trade chip. You know, he's going to be out there because they're trying to create excitement. And then Astory Ruiz, the speedster in center field, who is very, very young. In effect, there's not really an outfield spot for Rooker. Not an everyday spot. He can get playing time. You know, you bench Kemp here. You set down Laureano to give him a rest here. You don't like the Ruiz. So Rooker can play. But there's no everyday slot that right now is his. Additionally, the DH is Jesus Aguilar. He hits from the right side. Rooker hits from the right side. You can maybe move Aguilar to first base, but then you're taking your Rule 5 pickup, the Nido kid, and, you know, what do you do with him? They will play Rooker. They're not going to bench him tonight. But long term, this guy doesn't profile as that kind of player, the kind we saw in Baltimore, nor does he have like an easy route to playing time. Now, if they trade Laureano, if somebody gets injured, obviously it opens up. And for the time being, enjoy it. Now, the Mets are a different challenge when it comes to pitching versus what he saw with Baltimore. But we'll see how he handles it tonight. We'll see how he handles it for the weekend. Finally, we get to our 5th moment that will matter. A team that could maybe use Brent Rooker right now. Philadelphia Phillies. I started the week by picking on the Phillies, right? Told you about their bullpen. We talked a little about Bryson Stott. Let's pick on the Phillies a bit more, right? They lose last night in Cincinnati. They're up against the Reds again this evening. Check out some of these early season numbers. I'm just going to read them off for you. Trey Turner, Nick Castellanos, and JT Realmuto. 3 proven vets, proven power hitters, guys that can hit. They have combined for 1 home run and 11 ribbies. 1 home run and 11 ribbies from Castellanos, Turner, and Realmuto. Philadelphia leads baseball in strikeouts, 132 of them. Real Muto, 17 strikeouts this year to 1 walk. Castellanos leads baseball with 22 strikeouts this season. Last season, they were 5th in baseball in runs, or 5th in the NL in runs. 5th in the NL. This year, they're 12th. Last season, they were 4th in the National League in home runs. This year, they're 10th. Now, they got 15 runs on Sandy Alcantara this past Monday, and that's when we talked about him. We talked about Bryson Stott, and man, if you can beat up Alcantara, you keep it going. And maybe that was the turning for Philadelphia. It wasn't. Subsequent to the 15 runs against the reigning Cy Young winner, Sandy Alcantara, here's what Philadelphia has done in the last games. A total of 8 runs. 8 runs in 3 games. Struggles. Now, they're in Cincinnati. If your team is struggling, if your offense is having a challenge, the great place to be is Cincinnati. So last night they were up against Nick Lodolo. He is by far the best pitcher Cincinnati had. So I didn't expect Philadelphia to come out and beat the hell out of Lodolo, and it didn't happen. They were okay, but they didn't get things going. Tonight, Saturday and Sunday, get these guys rolling. Real Muto, Castellanos, even Trey Turner. This guy's got to get moving. I know everybody's excited about Bryce Harper returning, but if he's coming back and the team is 10 games under 500, who cares? And right now, they're well under 500. So they got to get this offense going. Pitching hasn't been that good either. Hasn't been a good start overall for the Phillies. But tonight it matters. Tonight, let's figure it out. You're not facing anything tough on the hill. Go out there, get your hits, get your runs, maybe some homers. Get this thing turned around, or it will disappear quite quickly for the Philadelphia Phillies. Those are the 5 things that will matter for this Friday night. When we return on the 5-pack, it is the Pack Rip time. 1990 Fleer baseball. We'll relive some old memories after this on the 5-pack.
Why am I smiling on this Friday morning? Well, normally I'm a pretty happy guy, but when it comes from the sports perspective, I'm a native New Yorker, and then maybe the worm is turned when you look at New York sports teams. And I'll tell you the reason why. Because for the first time since 1994, the Nets, the Knicks, the Islanders, the Rangers, and the Devils are all in the playoffs. That's a positive sign. The Giants were a playoff team a year ago, and they won a playoff game knocking off the Minnesota Vikings. The Jets are on the verge of getting Aaron Rodgers from the Green Bay Packers, and they're going to have Super Bowl expectations in 2023. But if you focus on the teams now that are getting ready for the playoffs, the Islanders, Rangers, and Devils, the Stanley Cup playoffs get going next week. The Nets and the Knicks playoff games get going on Saturday. I'm not saying that the Knicks and the Nets can win a championship this year. No, but it's a sign of things to come. The Nets are obviously more likable without Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, James Harden, and even though Ben Simmons is still a part of the team, he barely ever plays for the team. The Knicks have been a wonderful story this entire year as Jalen Brunson has been a culture changer, and it's a positive sign when you look at both of those franchises and where they're moving forward. When you look at the National Hockey League, the Islanders, I don't think they're winning the Stanley Cup this year. I think for the Devils, when you look at the Hughes brothers, led by a superstar and like Jack Hughes, sign of things to come for New Jersey. The Rangers are the team who lost in the Eastern Conference Finals a year ago to the Tampa Bay Lightning that potentially can win the Stanley Cup. The problem with that is they've got the Bruins, who have had a historically great season in the Eastern Conference. But enjoy it, New Yorkers. Sports is relevant once again. For more content like this, go to Better Sports Network app, bettersports.com, and Better Network on all your social media platforms.
Time now for the Daily Pack Rip on the 5-pack with Kyle Elfrink.
Yes, indeed. That is how we end every single edition of the 5-pack here on the Better Sports Network. Looking ahead to the schedule today, we've got some MLB DFS thoughts coming up for a big Friday slate that starts at 1 o'clock. That'll be followed at 3 p.m. by the Fantasy Football Game Show. Each and every day you can catch that. More DFS talk at 5. Campus to Canton is coming your way at 7 tonight. And then at 8 o'clock, Dynasty Nerds on a Friday. As for us here on the 5-pack, it is time for our pack break. Today we are featuring the 1990 Fleer baseball cards. Now, I told you earlier in the show, the supposed most valuable card in this set is somebody you will not guess. There were a lot of stars back in 1990. You know, Bo Jackson and Ken Griffey Jr. was just getting started. Eric Davis, all these guys. They are not the most expensive card in this set. It appears to be, according to some quick research we did, Jose Uribe. Who the heck is Jose Uribe? Middle infielder for the Giants. Now, why is his card worth so much? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. It appears to be some kind of hobby joke that Jose Uribe is showing up as the most valuable card. Like, you can go on eBay and it's like $50 for a PSA 10 of Jose Uribe. And there is nothing special about the card. It's not unique. There's no air on it, nothing. But it appears that if we pull a Jose Uribe, we have hit the gold mine for the 1990 Fleer baseball set. Fleer, we have not opened Fleer. We've done a lot of Tops and Upper Deck, Donruss, but no Fleer. This was another regular in the 80s and 90s, Fleer baseball cards. There was a point in like 1987 where Fleer was like the place to be. I remember that 87 set was kind of hard to get. This 90 set was not. And as soon as I open this wax pack, I'm going to be reminded these are some ugly cards. Ugly. Now, I remember this card specifically because this guy was a good player in 1990. Marquise Grissom. But what I tell you, I mean, you know, I've talked this week about Upper Deck and like how beautiful their cards are. You know, 1991 hockey, 91 basketball, baseball cards, of course. The reason that Upper Deck stands out so beautifully is because this is what they were competing against. This isn't horrendous or horrible, but it ain't very good. Now, one great thing about Fleer is they kind of did the back of the baseball card better than even Tops. They had a lot of room for a lot of stats. Now, Marquise Grissom, this was his rookie season. Marquise was a big-time up-and-comer at this point. But so they've got his minor league stats and then his initial major league stats. He'd only played 26 games by this point. The other thing with Fleer, they did this for years. Check out the bottom. Like that the vital signs. Look, things like on-base percentage, slugging percentage, strikeout ratio. 1990, Fleer was throwing that down. They were ahead of the game. Everybody else was talking about game-winning RBIs. Fleer, on base percentage, slugging, strikeout ratio. Nobody did that stuff. Good leadoff card, Marquise Grissom. Good leadoff hitter, by the way, too. Here's a guy who I only remember as like Mr. Pinch Hitter. It seemed like this guy was never in the starting lineup. He was always pinch hitting. Darnell Coles. I remember him most with Detroit. Obviously, here he's with the Mariners. He was an average player. You know, always kind of your fourth outfielder kind of thing. Now, here's a beauty. This is coming off of his second season. This guy would have become the all-time home run champ for a single season if we had played out the 1994 season. We didn't. We went on strike. So Matt Williams is a guy who's forever lost to history. I mean, he was on pace to blow away Maris's home run record in 94. Now, McGuire may have come along and Bonds and all that and taken it from Williams, but this guy would have been a big deal. Big deal. Now, this is 1990. This is when he was just getting started. He hit 18 home runs in 84 games in 89 for the Giants. He hit just 202 in 89. There you go. Matt Williams. Boy, here's a guy that was fun to root on. As a youngster who played second base and was not the tallest nor biggest dude in the room, you looked up to a guy like Mark Lemke. If Mark Lemke can do it, then I can do it. Mark Lemke, you don't see it here, but Mark Lemke even wore like goofy science teacher glasses when he was on the field. And he was a part of those good Braves teams back in the day. Now, this is, again, another youngster. I mean, 3 of our first 4 cards in this pack rip. These guys, Lemke, Matt Williams, Marquise Grissom, guys are all pretty well rookies on these cards. Now, those aren't specifically rookie cards, but they just started their baseball career. This guy was a vet by the time 1990 came around. Got Willie Randolph going there. Willie Randolph, if you're a Yankees fan, he's big time. Late 70s, early 80s. By the time he got to the Dodgers here in 90, he was kind of on the back end of his career. Now, this is classic. This is something you only get with old baseball cards. And I'm not kidding on this one. I'm just going through the pack as they land. Some dude named Jay Tibbs, okay? Some dude named Jay Tibbs. What's my next card? Some dude named James Tibbs. Not kidding. I got back-to-back Jay Tibbs in my 1990 foot. Why couldn't they be back-to-back Jose Uribes? It had to be Jay Tibbs. Damn the luck. Gerald Young of the Houston Astros. Let's get it centered. Give him a little love. Now check this for me, Heather. I think Heather's got the list. I think this card might be worth something. Let me pull it up here. I might have a card. I'm going to check here. This card might be worth something, like $10 when I say something. Ricky Henderson. This is MVP, coming off his MVP season. Ricky Henderson. And doing what he does best. Taking a lead off. How many stolen bases he have in 89? 52. Not a huge total. But I do believe 89, must have been 90, maybe he was MVP. Actually, I was wrong on 52. He had 77 stolen bases because he played with the Yankees and the A's. Now, we are told, Heather's looked this up, if this is a perfect 10, $35. Ho! Big, big win, Ricky Henderson. Well, I guess they're, first I get 2 Jay Tibbs back-to-back in the same pack. Then I get this guy. Is there anything? You want to talk about a punch in the nads. The checklist? There's not even a pitcher. We don't like checklist. Terrible. This guy always had a great last name for a pitcher. Eric Plunk. Eric Plunk. Like if he hit a hitter, then you always have to say, oh, and Plunk plunks him. Like by law, as an announcer, you had to say that. Okay. Wow, I got to admit, I know a lot of my 1990s baseball. I do not recognize this name. And from the looks of his photo on this card, it appears that Cecilio Guante took a wrong turn and just ended up in a major league dugout one day. Hey, do you play baseball? Sure. Give me a mitt. I'll take a hat. Oh, you want to take a photo for Fleer? Yeah, let's do that. Okay, thanks, Celio. Thanks, Cecilio. He actually played a lot of years. His rookie year was 82 with the Pirates. He had a couple of years with 100 innings. Somehow for the Rangers in 89, he threw 70 innings. So I apologize, Cecilio Guante. Now here's a Ranger I know. Pete Incaviglia. Oh, Pete Incaviglia. I remember calling my first ever baseball game. It was a part of like a, we were doing play-by-play at a real Major League Baseball game, but it was like a summer camp thing. And Pete Incaviglia played for the Phillies, and I think he had a home run that day. He might have been the first home run I ever called. Here's another great, Darrell Evans. I mean. He was a pinch hitter, kind of DH guy. And then finally, we close it down with Major League prospects, Delino DeShields and Jason Grimsley. Now, most people know Delino DeShields. Jason Grimsley was from, I believe, Cleveland, Texas. And my uncle lived in Cleveland, Texas, and he loved this guy, Jason Grimsley, who stuck around for a long time. It's a pretty interesting prospect card here. Delino DeShields and Jason Grimsley. Well, that does it for our pack rip, and that does it for the 5-pack. We'll see you on Monday at 12 Eastern.